All right. Seems like we're live. We see quite a few people. On a few just joined, so we'll wait until everyone will come and join us. Let's give a few moments. Yeah. Okay, so let's give it, let's say, 5 minutes.
Sure.
So the numbers go a bit up. Yeah. So we might have also some people joining us live. So we will not be able to see how many people are here and present, but that's okay. Yeah, I actually plan to do a little ice-breaking question to ask if there were any Ukrainians and also ask in the chat if we have anyone from which countries we have the participants. But since it seems like the live following is a bit greater than actual participation at the session, so it makes no sense. So all of our speakers, including myself, we are from Ukraine. And I see some of the organizing team members, which are also from all corners of the world. So really international. Great. So if you're a live participant, try to submit questions as well. And hopefully our event coordinators will be able to communicate them to us. And hopefully we will have some questions from the audience as well. It would be great to have some more interaction. So it's not just us talking and discussing, but also we'll have some input, hopefully from the audience as well. So let's see. And thank you very much, all the organizing team, to be here with us and also to give us this space dedicated entirely for Ukraine, which is a really timely matter, all things considered. So thanks a lot. One more time. And also, I would like to use this opportunity as we're waiting for another 3 minutes before we actually start our discussion to thank our amazing panelists for joining us, for making this time. You all have really amazing stories, and I'm really, really excited to dive into all of them to get to know you in depth and also being able to transmit the stories of yours to the rest of the world, to those people who are interested in. So, really excited for that.
Thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
Okay, few people are coming in. That's great. Let's give a couple more minutes and we will be starting our panel. All right. So let's not put it back for any longer. Let's just start right now. Hello everyone. Welcome at the panel discussion. My name is Anna Koreneva, and I will be a moderator for this discussion. And I work as a consultant in government and public sector at Ernst & Young, and occasionally I also do some Model United Nations activities, so no stranger to that format of debates and activities. And today the panel discussion titled Ukrainian Youth Saving the Democracy. And it is very timely matter, as mentioned before. And once again, thank you, the organizing team, for giving us so much space. Thank you, the audience, who are following this discussion. And my special thanks obviously goes to all of the participants who agreed to be with us today. And we have quite a diverse group of ladies. So we have with us Kate Kartidze. She is a volunteer at the Ukrainian office of the International Migrants Organization. She's also an active member of the organization Students for Liberty. Then we also have Darina Korsh, who is coordinator head of the Lviv branch of the Ukrainian Students for Freedom organization. And last but not least, we have Galina Balabanova, who is the founder of the Citizen Hub in Mariupol. She's activist and volunteer. She's currently based in Lviv. Before we dive into the deliberation of today's panel, let me make just a few remarks regarding the organizational side. So we have 1 hour, and firstly, we will introduce some opening remarks from our panelists, and then we will do 2 blocks: the impacts of war in Ukraine, to hear a little bit more about the personal experience of all of our great panelists, what impacts it had on them personally, and also on the Ukrainian youth in general. And the second block will be dedicated to the role of the Ukrainian youth in saving diplomacy and democracy of the country. So if there will be any questions in between, we will see. I'll try to take them in, maybe in between the blocks. If not, maybe in the end. So let's see if we will have any interaction from our followers. So without further ado, as Russian troops attacked Ukraine, its efforts to maintain independence puts Ukraine into the spotlight. We hear and watch the news probably nonstop. We follow what is happening on the grounds, how the fightings are going on, how the soldiers on the front lines trying to protect the land, protect the people. Uh, Unfortunately, less attention is actually paid to one very important topic and one of the main drivers of the resistance, which are people, and especially one of the groups, which is the Ukrainian youth. So that's why this is the topic that we wanted to discuss today. And now I will invite our panelists one by one to give a brief introduction of themselves, where they are currently based, what thoughts on the topic and generally they have, and any other remarks they would to kick off our discussion. So let's start with Halina.
Good day, everyone. My name is Galina, and I'm from Mariupol. I'm co-founder of Educational Hub in Mariupol. We were based there since 2016 and until the full-scale invasion of Russia. We worked in the field of non-formal education in the Azov region, not only in Mariupol. And during the first months of full-scale invasion and Mariupol siege, we were only a volunteer center and coordinational center that united more than 200 volunteers, mostly youth people. And despite of all these threats, we managed to provide assistance to 25,000 locals with help of our small entrepreneurs and international partners. And from the spring 2022, Halabuda was relocated from Mariupol, first to Zaporizhia, because it was like the nearest city to Mariupol and to the borderline to Russia's invasion. And later, due to the increase of military threats in Zaporizhia, we moved the second one in Cherkasy. and Lviv region. So our hub is offline, working in Cherkasy. It is the center of Ukraine, and I am working in Lviv, and we have online and offline activities in Lviv Oblast, and currently I'm here.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Darina.
Hello, everyone. My name is Darina. I'm a third-year student in International Economic Relations at Ivan Franko National University. So I'm from Eastern Ukraine, from Kryvyi Rih, but I study in Lviv, as you mentioned. I am a coordinator and former head of Lviv headquarter in Ukrainian Students for Freedom. And it's really an honor for me to be today at this panel and to speak alongside other like speakers and Helena and Ketvan. Of course, I couldn't compare my experience with theirs, but I hope to represent Ukrainian youth today in this conversation and to give a valuable perspective on questions that may occur. So thank you for listening to us and being here.
Thank you very much. It was actually really great that Ketevan connected me with you, and I'm really glad that all of you have a little bit different experience from each other. So we really have some people from NGOs, some youth students, and someone who actually represents an international organization and the body of the UN present in Ukraine. And with these, I'm linking to Ketevan's experience. So could you please introduce yourself as well briefly?
Good evening, everyone. And thank you a lot for inviting me to this panel. It's really, really honor for me to be here. So I'm Ketevan Kartsidze. For everyone who is surprised by name, I'm half Georgian and half Ukrainian. That's my name sounds very Georgian. So I'm right now I'm working for as a United Nations volunteer for Organization for International Migration, IOM. And I arrived in Ukraine like around 2 months ago. Before I was having very, very usual and normal life in Prague. So that's in short and very that's my story.
Well, thank you, Ketevan. You actually touched upon one of the points, one of the questions that I wanted to ask personally you. So actually, since the start of this war, 13.4 million Ukrainians were relocated, displaced either in Ukraine or had to leave their home country because of the devastations of their own cities, etc. And the International Organization for Migration is mobilizing lots of teams and boosting their capacities in Ukraine lately a lot, and also in the neighboring countries to respond to this immense humanitarian crisis and all to accommodate all the needs of the Ukrainians that are forced to leave across the countries, and also they are being displaced internally and externally. So on the ground from Ukraine, Ketevan is present here. So you're based in Prague, Czech Republic. As you said, you're living your absolutely normal life. You're still studying, you're working, gaining some experience. So typical young person in the beginning of your career path. What were your main drivers that actually moved you and when you make your decision to turn your life upside down and actually relocate to Ukraine at these uneasy times?
Yeah, so I was living in Prague for the last 5 years, for the last 8 years in Czech Republic. As you mentioned, I have studied here. I was working here as a project manager in a research company. And when the February 2022 all this starts, to be honest, I feel the duty that I need to do something useful for my country. So I start working, not working, but volunteering in weekends with NGOs in Prague. So I was working with refugees here. For some time, I even worked as a Czech lecturer because I speak fluently Czech. So, when the people are relocating to the Czech Republic to start work or some kind of life, they need to know the basic other languages. So I was working with IDPs, refugees in Prague too for 3-4 months. But after some time, it was not still enough for me, let's say. And I started to search like how I can do, because I see the huge wave of the people, not only young, but the people coming from Ukraine to the Europe. I totally understand their reasons, because many of them have the children, parents, and so on. And it's very, very hard to stay in Ukraine when your family is in danger. I don't have a family at this moment. I don't have a parent in Ukraine, so I was kind of free of all these responsibilities, and I just applied for to be a volunteer in Ukraine. And not so many people want right now to come to the Ukraine, so I just passed like all interviews and what was necessary, and arrived in Ukraine in the beginning of February and become a part of the International Organization for Migration. I'm super happy to be here because, as I mentioned, there is a lack of the people, especially young people. And considering that I have education from Europe, I have a work experience for Europe, I thought that like my knowledge, gain knowledge, can be very, very useful here. So that's how I ended up for now in Odessa, and I'm traveling in the different cities, and let's see.
Well, I really do admire all your efforts, because I was also volunteering in one of the relocation centers here in Prague, and it was extremely hard to see these people who were really scared. They were traumatized, depressed, mainly women, children, elderly people. They were lining up. They didn't know where they were going to end up here in the Czech Republic. And we received over 300,000 refugees from Ukraine. And it's a quite big question here. And really, really, we need the efforts of all the volunteers here in the Czech Republic, but also on the ground in Ukraine, because even more so, people actually could not leave the Ukraine for several reasons of their own. And Ketuan, you wanted to add something?
No, I totally agree with you. Like, it's very hard to work with the people who left everything, especially with people who are coming from the eastern part of the country, for the Mariupol or from Kharkiv. And when you are talking with those people, you you are living in Prague, you are having your beautiful life, and you're talking to the people who lost everything. So I guess this was the main reason what drive to me to do something, because I think it's in every like person's life becomes a moment when you want to do something for your country, for the country when I was born. So like speaking with those people and be lecturer of Czech language for those people, this was one of the main reasons why I decided to come here and help in the place.
Well, thank you very much for your input. And this is actually brings me to you, Halina, who actually was brave enough to carry on her activist work and volunteering in Mariupol when it was besieged, as she mentioned before. So Halina was one of the co-founders of the educational hub in Mariupol, which was operating about 6 years before the war brought in. And actually, in the snap of fingers, it has to transform from this civic organization who was actually connecting people from different spheres of the society together, from the government, from business, from civic activism in one place, to a sort of a volunteering hub, and bringing in all those volunteers. And you were actually doing such a great job. I read that you gave away about 2,500 food kits in Mariupol. You also managed to help at least 25,000 people in Mariupol, which was a great effort. And here you are an example of someone who stayed, who was willing to dedicate energy really, really fearlessly. So could you please tell the audience what was the change that the hub operation in the first moments of war had to go through? Maybe which changes have you and your team lived through?
For us, it was like surprising and not surprising situation in the similar time, because Mariupol have been in the situation like behind the war, and it is about 15, maybe 18 kilometers to the front line. to the gray zone and to the front line. So since 2014, we are living this situation, and for first 2 years of a war in Donetsk Oblast, we're working just like volunteers. We do know nothing about some civic engagement, NGOs, what is social enterprises is, etc., etc. But we all want to do something. We want to make a change. We don't want to just to support our army forces and IDPs in the region. We want to involve. To restart the processes of developing the city and the region. And this 6 years for us was like a personal challenge for me to look to my city and to see the other ways it can be developed. Not only like mono city with some huge plans and with like steel economy and with this economy based on the sea, but also like human potential region with a human potential, with micro businesses, small enterprises, and with supporting to youth. And for us, it was really important to start. I'm sorry, I have a dog. To restart the youth council in Mariupol and to support youth that want to develop their own businesses. And it was our main priority for that time. And when in February, like 2, maybe 3 days before the full-scale invasion and all this Putin speech, we thought that it would be difficult for us, but we can manage it based on our previous experience, and it won't be like this full scale threat for us. And when the 24th of February happens, we just came to Halabuda and saw others, actors from Mariupol, from civil sector, from businesses, our deputies, they just came to Halabuda because we were only the one platform that was like independent, and all of them don't feel stress and don't feel any threats to say what they will do in that. One of them live in Mariupol in 2 days, and the second one just giving support to the people nearby the Mariupol that was affected the first of all at the February. And then I understood that I need to accumulate all my manager skills against all these 6 years, and try to use all these. I don't know how to tell it. Maybe to use the potential for these people, like 20, maybe 30 people, and to scale it in 10 times. We need to expand our activities to help, because we have no choice at that time.
Well, that sounds like a great mission. So do you believe that the operations and the main objective of your hub will be changed after the war ends? Do you believe
No.
it will be really great transformation, or you will just go back on the course as you went prior to the war?
Actually, we had a dream that Halabuda Hub will be in several years, will be in the 5, maybe 7 cities in Ukraine, and the war just helped us to expand. And now we are working in 2 different regions, and our mission just expand as well as our activities, because our main mission was to support youth and businesses in Azov region, and now it is supporting in Ukrainian level, like So I don't think it will be some great changes of our mindset or our mission and vision of how to develop the cities after the war. It will be a lot of work, but it is really, for me, it is our values. It is most. I'm sorry, I have some issues with connection now. Do you hear me?
No, we can hear you really
Yes.
well.
So for me, it is more important to stay with your values and to do all of you. You can do the best, and I think after the war we can use these successful cases that we implement in different regions in Ukraine in the city that will be rebuilt and redeveloped.
Thank you. Well, it's great to hear that you managed to find at least some of the silver lining to all the events happening. That in a way it boosted all your activities, though in a little bit different direction. And also, we will come back a little bit more on the role of the youth, as you mentioned that they actually are a larger part of the volunteers. So my questions will follow up on that point. So hold it in mind. And now I would like to ask another panelist, which is Darina Kosh, who is currently a student in Ukraine. So, as a student, how the war did affect you? Because I know that in many ways the war was really disruptive, and that around 5 million children and young people actually were deprived from the right for quality education. So, can you share some of your experience, and what was it like? What is it like to study in Ukraine during the war that is going on?
Mhm. Yeah, thank you for the question. So I think that my answer will be actually applicable to experience of almost majority of students in Ukraine. And when the war started, education stopped for a month for all students in Ukraine, not only because our higher education institutions stopped the education, but because students just couldn't continue studying in those circumstances that were in the beginning of the war. And everyone just started volunteering, helping somehow Ukrainian army. And a lot of my friends, they in different ways joined this volunteering movement, even those who didn't volunteer at all before. And I started. I am honored to say that I could relate to creation of the Kyiv humanitarian headquarters, which some of my friends in Ukrainian Students of Freedom also created. And I helped them a little bit, and now it still continue cooperates. So, like in the first part of the year of the full invasion war, I was totally absorbed in the work of this headquarters, and I highly encourage you, if you are not subscribed to our Instagram channel, to go and to find and to donate, because it still operates and it cover small needs and big needs of our army that large headquarters cannot cover. So yeah, returning back to your question, I think that it was really something that you cannot describe, because a lot of students, they just switched from being students to being active citizens and to helping Ukrainian army. But I think that now a lot of students, they try to somehow get used to to the war, and to continue studying, but at the same time volunteering and creating some events, organizing something. So yeah, I think that now it's I would say that Ukrainian students really for me are heroes, because some of my friends started education and went to the Ukrainian army, went to the war. Some went abroad, like because they didn't want to, but because they had to. Some created big volunteering headquarters and did impossible. So for me, Ukrainian students really like just heroes. So yeah.
And what is the situation right now? Are you still having like regular or more or less regular classes, or how does this study actually proceeds for the university students at the moment?
Mm-hmm. So most of the students, most of the universities, they turned to online learning, online studying from the beginning of the war, and majority of those universities continue such type of studying because it is much easier in circumstances that we have, like when we do not have stable electricity, when we have like every day some air alarms. It is easier to continue online. So a lot of students study online, and also it is easier to study online from the abroad because a lot of students went abroad because they had to leave the cities. So yeah, like mostly we study online, and I would say that as I see from comments of my friends and other students, they want to continue studying online because it is much more convenient, and yeah, that's all.
All right, thank you very much. It is a bit hard to imagine how is it that most of the students actually study online or are unable to proceed with their studies. As for us, being here, the safety across the world, people were really unable to study for longer than 2 years when we had COVID. And here again, when the life started to getting back to normal, young people of Ukraine had to be again isolated, and they had to somehow find and create opportunities for themselves. So maybe this brings me to another question, and slowly a bit more to the block of the youth engagement and the role of youth. So again, Darina, you're also one of the head and coordinators of the Lviv branch of the non-profit organizations Ukrainsky Studenty za Svobodu, in English, Ukrainian Students for Freedom. And its mission states that they want to unite, educate, and mobilize young Ukrainians who are committed to the ideal of freedom. And it seems like your NGO is really busy, was really busy with doing some events. How did it change for an NGO like this, a student NGO who was mainly connecting young people, trying to bring together all the leaders of the future? How did it change for this organization? So what do you actually do now? And do you think it's still possible for young people to be able to stand up for democracy in Ukraine?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for such a great question. So a lot of it's indeed true, because our organization was mainly focused on organizing different educational events, protests. So our organization was one of the main organizers of protests against former Minister of Education Sergei Shkrlet, who was resignated yesterday, actually. And it's a big victory for our organization, because we organized a lot of protests, a lot of petitions were created. But when the war started, we couldn't continue doing what we used to do. And a lot of our members, they joined different initiatives. They created their own initiatives. As I said earlier, it was one of the biggest ones is Kyiv Humanitarian Headquarters. Another one, for example, is Second Front. It's also a humanitarian headquarters in Odessa. Other students created, for example, Telegram channels that were monitoring Russian military in Ukraine, and people could just report there if they saw some Russian military. So yeah, it was really decentralized in the beginning because everyone just did what they could do. But now our organization, Ukrainian Students for Freedom, collects a lot of donations to support the whole Ukrainian army, but also some of our members who are now in Ukrainian army protect our country. And we don't have an opportunity to continue going to protests because of the situation in Ukraine. Although we have a lot of reasons for those protests, but we cannot continue organizing them now. But we hope to do that after our victory and to do a lot more. Yeah, thank you.
So do you still think that the voice of the Ukrainian youth can be heard, that you can be loud enough, or do you think it's just the pause or the end of the activist life of the young people, or do you have any other opportunities to express it?
Of course, it's not the end for sure. I think that it is heard, and Ukrainian students and youth continue being socially active, but just in different ways. So, for example, I don't know if you've heard. You may possibly have heard about this initiative of Ukrainian students unissued diplomas. It's a great exhibition around the world, which was organized by Ukrainian students from Canada. It's exhibition about unissued actual diplomas of Ukrainian students who went to the war and died there. And I think that now this activism of youth, it's just mainly switched to the topic of the war, because before that it was focused on different topics like education, like entrepreneurship and so on. But now it's mainly the war, and it is for sure is not less active, but it just is active in different ways. Yeah.
So the energy was a little bit redirected for obvious reasons, but it's still great that students remain active. And Katie, for example, you just moved to Ukraine, and you are actually representing one of the ways how young people can be active by actually putting in their effort and time and helping on the ground. So can you tell us a little bit more on that experience? And as you said that you felt that you were not doing enough, was it easy for you as a representative of the Ukrainian youth to find such opportunities and to actually realize all of your desires to help the country?
Okay, so let me please start a little bit from far away. I will divide Ukrainian as in two parts. One part which is seen right now outside of Ukraine during different reasons. So who escaped for the war or who were living here like just before the war, and the second part who is right here in Ukraine. I think that both of these parts are very, very important because I know a huge amount of the people who right now are living in the different state in Europe and are doing the great and amazing job. One, for example, is one of my friends. She is great journalist. She's from Mariupol. She has an older parents, and right now she needs to be outside of Ukraine. She's living in Warsaw, and she's doing just a great job. The main part of Ukrainian yes, who are living outside of Ukraine is like raising awareness about the war, about what is happening right now in Ukraine, because we have people tend to used to everything, and like especially people in Europe, when you are not surrounded by air alarms, for me it was very, very difficult to use to them when I just moved to Ukraine. So for example, me and my friend, like in December 2022, we were in Washington, and we were talking about the war and rising awareness. So Ukrainian young people who are outside of Ukraine right now are doing the not less important job than Ukrainian in the Ukraine, because they are raising awareness. They are talking about the problems. They are trying to help like NGOs to get the funds and so on. And then we have the second part, who are right now in Ukraine also doing an incredible job. 2 weeks ago, I just met a girl. She's only 20 years old. She has a huge NGOs, and she told me she's from Kharkiv, and she told me that like last 1 year she's all time working for basement. To be honest, I cannot imagine this, like how you can just like one whole year work from the basement. So, and when it comes to the rising democracy issues, that's my personal opinions, but I think right now for Ukrainian youth and Ukrainian people right now, issues are to how to survive in the situation, how to deal with the war, like how to help the people who right now need this help, need the help. And only after, I hope the war will end very, very soon. Then after this, Ukrainian youth will be strong enough after all the situation to start talking about the democracy and democratical principles. When it comes to my experience, as I mentioned, I have work experience from the Europe. I was managing the huge project. So for me, I cannot say it was like difficult to find the job. And what was like a big surprise, and I was surprised in the good way for me, that I have met in Ukraine many people who come back to the Ukraine with the same reason. I met young people, let's say, who come from Canada, from USA, just as me, for volunteering, because I said we have a great life outside of Ukraine, but we feel this duty to come and help our country. So I'm not the one example who decided to change their life, and I'm very happy to see such people. I think if anyone would like to come to Ukraine and help the Ukraine, it's quite easy right now, because not everyone wants to come to the Ukraine. Of course, you are starting from the, let's say, lower level. I also have a lower level than I have before in my work. But when you are going to help your country, this is not something what you are thinking about your career growth, but you are thinking how to be useful. Yeah, that's from my side.
That was an amazing output. And when you were speaking about those stories and personal encounters, I really got the goosebumps. And it really breaks my heart to hear that so many young people, despite them being ready to contribute and repaying for their country, but in the end, it means for them some sacrifice of their time, of their youth, of their career. But at the same time, I feel like if there are so many young people who are driven to go back to Ukraine, that we still have some hope that all those minds, they bring this know-how, their ideas. Most of them, they have education at European or other world universities. So with all this capital, this is flooding to Ukraine, we will be able to rebuild its democratic values, maybe not rebuild, but rather strengthen, because Ukraine has never been such a strong country as it became just recently, a year ago. So I'm really happy for all of your experience. I'm happy that you are helping on the ground. And also, I have one personal question to you, Ketuan. Would
Sure.
you consider staying in Ukraine after the war ends?
Well, first of all, as a volunteer, I come here for like 6 months, but I already know that I will stay here for a longer than 6 months, because I would not allow myself just to leave like in the middle of my path and like what I have started. I cannot say right now like what will happen once the war ends, but I know how important it's for Ukraine once the situation will end to rebuild this country. Right now, I'm doing my best what I can. I am going to continue this. Once the war will end, I will see like if I will still be needed here or my experience will be needed here. Yes, I will stay. If I will find out that my experience will be needed more in the other place, I will leave for the other place.
Well, thank you very much for answering
Sure.
this a bit personal question. And what about you, ladies? Have you thought of leaving the country? Because Halina, you were actually in Mariupol. You've experienced over 2 weeks of siege in those horrible conditions. Did the thought of actually moving out from the country cross your mind?
No, it never happened because I managed to evacuate from Mariupol only when 2 blocks from our hub we saw the Russian troops. So it was the red line for me. First 1 month, I thought that I will be back in Mariupol. Maybe in a month, maybe in a two, and just maybe after 6, maybe 7 months, I completely understood that it won't happen maybe in 1, 2, 3, or 5 years, but it never a question for me to leave Ukraine because I needed to be here and I need to be with my own city. For now, I don't think that I can be live in Mariupol first maybe 2, 3 years of its restoration and redevelop, and I think it will be like part time for me to go to Mariupol to several weeks and to go to some other places because that city. That Mariupol that I was born and I was working and I was grew up, no more existing, and it is really hard for me. But I cannot give up and just go somewhere else because I need to be here.
Well, in that regard, the remark that the city you were born in, that you were raised at, does not exist, I can relate very much to that because I myself, I'm from the Donbas region, from Lugansk, which I had to leave back in 2014, and I never came back. So I also have this sense of duty that I would like to repay to my country, but probably I wasn't brave enough to leave everything behind like Ketiman did. But I hope that one day I will be able to probably contribute in some other ways and come back. And after I have my career and professional experience gained in Europe, that's it will be possible to redirect it into the restoration of Ukraine. Darina, what about you? Have you thought about leaving the country, or you want to stay in Ukraine rather and carry on with your activist activities?
Mhm. Currently, I'm not in Ukraine. I study as an exchange student in Croatia, but for sure it's temporarily. I plan to return back to Ukraine because I realized that I couldn't just live in another country. It just didn't feel right. And when I returned back to Kiev, to Lviv, I realized how much I love the cities, Ukraine, those people, and I cannot live without them, without seeing their faces. Even if conditions are much worse than in Europe or in other countries, I still want to contribute to Ukrainian rebuilding and be here. Yes.
Well, thank you very much for your opinion. And by the way, I really like the banner on your LinkedIn page, which has this like huge letters, "Be brave," like Ukraine. So, and
Thank
I
you.
do believe that all of our panelists, that you seem to be all really, really brave in one or other aspects. And really hats off to you. And I'm really happy and delighted that I share my origin. That's we all come from the this country because Ukrainians are indeed brave. And also, I'm happy to see that you, as young people, you are contributing to it. You're staying. You're really determined to help. And it seems like we are getting another 10 minutes, the last minutes of the panel. And I just noticed that we have a couple questions from the audience. So let's try to take them up. I will read them out loud and ask if any of you would like to answer them, or maybe if you want to all contribute to answering this question. So there is the first input. Thank you for the incredible words. I have a question. How can we, especially outside Ukraine, best push governments to support Ukraine more? This question came from Philippe Lefebvre, who is the director of the MUNers, or maybe it was a comment from the live stream. I'm not sure, but thank you for these questions. Would you like any of you to answer that? Maybe I'll give a space for all of you because it's a general question and I'm sure all of you might have some thoughts on that one.
I can start, Anna. I can start. So maybe, as I already mentioned, the part of answer, like rising awareness is very, very important of outside Ukraine. For example, in summer 2022, I was in Sarajevo where I meet Dasha, and I have a lecture here about the war and European reaction on the Ukrainian war. After this, I got invitation from Swedish students, and I held the same lecture, updated version for them. And to be honest, it was amazing because they're amazing young people, but they were not sure what is happening exactly in Ukraine. They don't know like how their governments, because when you are a student, you have your own problems, how to pay the rent, how to live, like your life expenses, and you are not really like, you know that there is some war in Ukraine, but you are not paying attention. They listen to me, they have an amazing questions, and they was like, whoa, we did not know about this. So I think like for the students who are outside of Ukraine, it's very, very important to be active, to raise awareness around them to the students, because when you are speaking to the students are speaking to the students, they are taking more closer to their hearts. So this is something what everyone can do. And I have a lot of many friends who are outside of Ukraine doing right this. They're writing articles, they're making the presentations, lectures for the students. And when the students are aware about what is happening in their neighbor countries, like they can very, very easily push to the adults, to the government. So this is something what sounds easy, let's say raising awareness, but it's a huge amount of work. But this is something what I think everyone outside of Ukraine can do.
Oh, that was actually a very interesting remark because we as Ukrainians and also many of us are in the bubbles of those who are concerned. So we are following the news, we know what's going on. So for us, it is sometimes hard to imagine that someone might
Yes.
not be as well informed. So introduce communication is really important. It might have a certain impact, and actually this indirectly also create the pressure on their governments. So this creation of NGO to NGO, activist to activist, they actually can have this bottom up effect for the governments. What about you, Halina or Darina? Would you like to say a few words to that question?
Yeah, I wanted to say, if Halina doesn't mind. I remember this lecture of Kativan. It was really great and it was really empowering and touching. And I think that it's really important to do something, even small things, because it really empowers people around you and motivates them to do more, or at least to learn more about Ukraine. So if you see some activities, some protests, some events about Ukraine, for sure go to them and join them, because it's easier to do something when it's more people, when you are gathered together. So join any initiatives and be active, because it's really important for us in Ukraine, your support from abroad, and we feel it very much.
Thank you very much for your answer. And Halina, really briefly, if you may, because I actually have two more questions to answer from the live stream watchers.
Okay, for me, it is important to focus specifically on supporting existing and creating new communities of young people in Ukraine. So it will be really great if we have more events or more safe spaces to cooperate with other youth and to have these networking opportunities. Thanks.
That's amazing. Thank you very much. So our next question is from Mariam in the live stream, and she asks, "What NGOs and organizations do you work best with, or see doing the most work in Ukraine?" So it's a bit a tricky question. So if anything comes right to your mind, maybe share some thoughts.
and there are a lot of NGOs like working right here, NGOs on the local levels, like because like, there are a lot of NGOs which were created after the war started, and mostly they were created by the young people. If we are talking about the NGOs in an international levels, of course, it's United Nations and all agencies of United Nations, International Organization of Migration, United Nations High Council for Refugees, and we are talking Red Cross. Red Cross is also helping a lot here. Caritas, for example, or CARE, like all international organizations about which you have heard about. I don't remember any of like big who is missing here. So they are really working in Ukraine. It's a huge mobilization of humanitarian organizations, but like there's a lot of people who needs to be helped. There are millions of people who needs to help. So like also like it's very, very important for international organizations who are very famous and well known to cooperate with local organizations, because local organizations usually knows well a situation and they can help. So that's what I have seen so far.
Thank you very much for input. And I also feel like it is hard to say which of them actually does the best job, because most of them, they direct their efforts to helping all the people who are in need, providing some supplies either to civilian people or to the front lines for the soldiers. So I do believe, it's my personal opinion, that all of them are actually doing a great job.
Yeah, that's totally true. All of them are doing the great job, and very often they are cooperating also. So like we cannot say who is doing the better job, because for example, if one organization cannot do something, it's out of the scope of their help. They usually referring this to another organization. Guys, we cannot do this, but can you please do this? Because organizations has a different funds, different possibilities. So very, very often, even if organizations are the different, they are cooperating because they need, the main goal of organizations is to help and not don't have a competition. So that's to add to your note.
That's great. That's really great to hear that also there is some cooperation between certain organizations and NGOs. And I do believe that this is really useful, and it will also help to redistribute all those funds in a way to cover as many needs as possible. And probably since we all have only 4 minutes left of this panel, I would like to conclude with the very last question from Adam in the live stream. How many people from outside Ukraine do you encounter in Ukraine? Are there a lot of international volunteers? So, if you maybe can really, really briefly share your thoughts. Obviously, we're not talking about certain numbers, but if you can say a lot, a few, many.
I maybe can start and say a lot, and it's really empowering because when you go like in Lviv, in Kiev, you hear English a lot, even more than before the war, I would say. So it's really, it's a lot of foreigners, they became interested in Ukraine and helping Ukraine after the war started. And I cannot describe how much it really empowers you to continue do your work here. Thank you.
I would say
Alina, what about you?
yes, I would say a lot, but not enough, because we have no victory yet, so it's not enough. It's already always not enough. But I really appreciate all of work of foreign volunteers, especially in the western part of Ukraine, in the eastern part of Ukraine, because now I am in the western part and feel more safe here. But the guys from abroad go directly to the red line and to provide some help, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, when it comes to the humanitarian sectors, I think more than half are internationals. And then we have less, because that's very, very easily what we can explain, because usually international experts are coming. They already have some experience. They know how to act in the situation. So of course, when it comes to the humanitarian organizations, we see more international people than even the locals.
Well, that's great to hear that not only local activists are present and active in that sphere, that we do also have lots of foreigners, not just contributing with financial aid or military support, but also providing their efforts on the ground, which is really needed. That's what Ukraine is lacking, especially the civilian sector, obviously not speaking about the troops, but people do need help. So if there is anyone who is hearing us and you know about someone who wishes to contribute, I feel like any hands could be used. And with this, probably we have the last 2 minutes to conclude our panel. And I'll just ask our amazing panelists for any closing remarks they might want to share with the audience. Maybe really the key message that you would like them to take from this panel, really 1 or 2 sentences.
I would say just be brave like Ukraine. That's all.
That's a beautiful one. I love this.
I will add that like it doesn't matter if you are in Ukraine or outside of Ukraine. Anna, this is for you too, because I think like you can do an amazing job and support for this country even outside. So be brave outside or inside of Ukraine and do the best what you can do without any guilty that you are not in the place, because a lot of job are done outside of Ukraine too.
And I'm looking forward to see all of you in rebuild Mariupol in, let's say, like 2 years. And I really appreciate all of the panelists and all. Yes. Thank you.
Amazing. And I believe the time is up for us. One more time, thank you very much, ladies, for attending this panel, for sharing your thoughts, your experience with the audience. And of course, the last thank you for all the organizers for being with us, for having us, for assisting us, for doing this amazing job. So if you're in live stream, so feel free to join any last sessions left. And with this, I say my goodbyes to the audience and to our panelists.
Thank you a lot, Anna. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Goodbye.